Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Our 1 o'clock session for the Growth Club is now about to commence. And if you're in any of the last ones, there is no tech issues on this one. This one's working absolutely perfectly so far. So, for your benefit, I'm excited that we're starting on time. My name's Trent, if you don't know that yet. If this is your first session today, welcome. I'm so happy and excited for you. It's probably the 10th session that's run so far today. So we've had a lot of fun talking about workflow, AI compliance, productivity pricing, and now we're jumping into a compliance topic, which is around anti-money laundering and a whole bunch of stuff that both Corey and Stacie are going to unpack. A few little bit of housekeeping for the benefit of someone that's not joined a session yet. All the sessions are being recorded and transcribed. A few people have said, Trent, how are you doing this? I said, well, we're recording the session, we're uploading it into Vinyl, we're getting out all the transcript and the notes and the actions, and then we're going to create really cool content out of it so that you can then use it for whatever you want to use. So thanks to the Vinyl team for that. There are CPD points available on all sessions. Powered by Creditwise. So we're super thankful for that team for helping us out with the summit. And we are giving away $500 worth of gift cards over the next 2 days. And there's only a handful of you that have entered so far. It's pretty simple. Just jump on LinkedIn and just say, hey, Trent, I'm on, tag the firm, hashtag Growth Club. Give me a learning from a session you've been on. And you go in the draw. Like it'll take you 10 seconds and you might get $100 to go and buy food, go to the bottle shop, or a wine, or something that's more behaved than whatever I'm suggesting. You can do those things very quick, very easy. Huge thanks to all of our partners on the summit, particularly Intuit QuickBooks for being our big platinum partner on the summit. But secondly, I'm going to thank Annature for getting involved on the summit this week and for sharing your wisdom with us. So you're all here, you're in for a good treat. Corey and Stacie are very smart people. Every time I'm on a Zoom call or a phone call or a text chain with them, I'm learning something. So I expect that you will do the same for the next sort of 40, 45 minutes. So the topic we're talking about today is your firm AML ready? Start with ID checks, data collection, and compliance systems. And I know in particular, Corey, we're talking about Tranche 2 requirements, and that will also be discussed today. And I actually tried to ask Paul in the last session. I said, I don't know anything about it. Don't pretend. Maybe you do, Paul. He knew nothing as well. So maybe Paul's in this session, hopefully learning all about it. I'm going to hand over to you, Corey and Stacie, to introduce the session. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hope you're both well. Thanks for being here. Over to you.
Thanks, Trent. Can I get in on that gift card draw?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you jump
Beautiful.
onto LinkedIn right now and just say, Trent, I did it, and do all the right tagging and all that stuff, then yeah, you could get in on that draw as well.
All right, I'll do that after this.
And
Thank
what I
you.
should say as well, actually, if you're in the session, which you are, I can see there's, quite a few of you here. Jump in the chat. Tell us where you're dialing in from. Tell us who you are, where you are. We like engaging sessions. They make all of these way more easy to go. If you are just sitting and listening in the background, that's fine too. Hey, Joe. Hey, Lee. Dialing in from Trent's chest hair. What does that mean? I don't know what that means, Lee. Tyler, Bondi Beach. Tyler, I know exactly where you are, mate. The actual beach. That's awesome. So good. So good to have you guys here. Papua New Guinea. Wow, this is international. I like this. Well done. Walkham Hills. Welcome. Corey, over to you guys.
Thank you, Trent. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. So my name is Corey. I'm the founder and CEO of Annature, and I'm joined by Stacie, partner at PKF Newcastle Sydney. Hi, Stace.
Everyone. Hey, Corey.
All right. So today's session is going to be on client verification, AML, CTF, Tranche 2 reforms that are coming July next year. That's what we'll be unpacking, what the rules are now, what's changing, why it matters, and how we at Annature have built something to help you stay ahead of it. I'm going to share. You can see that's come through.
Yep, got it.
Perfect. All right, let's get into it. So, quick word on who we are at Annature. I've got a poll here. Trent, can we kick off that poll, please? And this is just to get a feel for the audience and who we're presenting to today. So please select the option that best represents you and your firm when it comes to verification and Annature. give it a second for the answers to come through.
Sorry, I can see them all as they're coming in, and you're all engaging perfectly. This is a rapid fire. I feel like I'm watching a race. It's like I'm not aware.
Cool.
I'm aware. It's like it's all happening. I'm aware of current requirements, but not implemented anything yet. No, I'm aware. I'm aware. I'm not aware. Oh, sorry. I feel like maybe I wrote one of these wrong. I'm aware of current requirements, but I've not implemented anything yet. That's leading the way at 38% of our audience. I'm aware
Cool.
and have a process in place. That's 28% of the audience. 23% are not aware, so they're perfect. You're in the right session. You'll be ticking aware in about 30 minutes time. And you're
Great.
aware and using Annature was around 10% of the audience. So that's what we have.
Excellent. All right. So that's great that we've got a lot of people that are going to be learning what these requirements are today and what's coming up. So Annature, we are an Australian-made and owned e-signature and ID verification platform. So we're built right here in Australia for the accounting profession. E-signing is at our core and has been since we launched in 2020, but we have been leading the industry for identity verification since we launched that in 2022. In fact, we were the first provider to launch a purpose-built solution for accountants that aligned directly with your TPB and ATO's compliance expectations. And we've been setting that standard ever since. I went ahead too fast, sorry. So we also integrate with the tools you use every day. So Account Kit, FYI Docs, Pinch, Zero Practice Manager, Maya Practice Manager. Stacie, I know that's what you use at PKF Sydney Newcastle,
Yep.
formerly Greatsoft.
hmm
So that's who we are at Annature. Where we are now, so we're going to talk about the current requirements and why ID verification over the last few years has been a really big hot topic. So a few years ago, verifying your client identities was one of those nice to have tasks. Some firms did it well, others didn't do it at all, and to be honest, there wasn't much enforcement around it. You could get away with not doing it, and that's changed. So that's changed dramatically. Regulators such as the TPB and the ATO, they've raised the bar because the risks for not doing it have become real, and we're seeing more and more cases where the consequences for not verifying someone's identity can be quite serious. And I have an example that I pulled up. In 2023, there was a case involving a tax agent in Sydney, and this tax agent was unknowingly caught up in it was a highly organized ID fraud scheme. Over several months, somebody posing as several individuals engaged that agent to prepare and lodge income tax returns. And they weren't sloppy or suspicious returns either. They were clean, had modest, believable deductions. Nothing about them really would have raised an eyebrow. The agent prepared and lodged 3 years worth of tax returns with the refunds all sent to a bank account that was controlled by that attacker. And months later, when the real taxpayers went to lodge their returns, they discovered that it had already been done and their IDs had been stolen. And the consequence for that was the TPB came out and suspended that tax agent. Not for committing fraud, but for failing to identify who he was acting for. And that there is the key point. It wasn't about fake deductions or criminal intent. It was about not having a proper ID verification process in place. And so if you're not verifying your clients and not just collecting their data, but verifying who they are, you could be the one that wears it when things do go wrong. So the current rules, we've talked about the risk, and so now let's talk about the responsibilities right now today under the TPB and the ATO. And the short version for that is if you are not verifying your clients, you're already not compliant. That's a requirement as of today. And it has been since 2022 when the Tax Practitioners Board came out with their practice note. So that practice note in 2022, which outlines exactly what's expected of you as a registered tax or BAS agent, states if you are onboarding a new client or even re-engaging with an existing client where sensitive information is involved, you're expected to confirm their full name, confirm either their date of birth or their residential address, and most importantly, cite a government-issued photo ID. You can use a passport or a driver's license, And there are provisions for when neither of those documents are available. You can be using a combination of original documents, such as a Medicare card or a birth certificate, but you must be able to say with confidence, yes, I've verified that this person is who they say they are against this ID document. And it's not just the TPB that's saying that as well. The ATO has also echoed those expectations. The ATO has published their own guidance on agent-client verification methods, especially when handling tax file numbers and lodging returns. And these minimum requirements in their simplest method state visually checking a client's identification document. They proceed to state that that method is suitable when you're interacting with the client in person or by video conference. And for most clients, a visual check of a driver's license will be all that it's needed. And that's word for word off the ATO's website. So it's not really up for interpretation. That is specifically what it says. That's one of the minimum requirements. There are an additional set of options where you can go on to verify non-primary documents. Like I said before, with the TPB, there's Medicare cards and birth certificates, but the simplest and the most straightforward way, and the way that we've seen firms over the last 3 years be compliant and meet these, is using one of those primary documents, being a license or a passport. And so, under the ATO's requirements, if you are not visually checking a photographic document, you need to verify 2 separate proof of identity documents. And like I said, it's word for word, straight from the ATO's website. So there's really no way to misinterpret those requirements. And the other piece that's important here is you're required to keep a record of what type of document you cited, when you cited it, and who it was cited by. So that's what the rules are today. If you're not doing that, you're not meeting today's baseline. And the next thing with this to call out is the second you start verifying clients' identities and start being exposed to driver's license and ID documents, there are several legal and security obligations that start to creep in. And all these are the hidden risks.
Corey. This is a great segue, Corey. Someone in the chat's just asked, do we need to keep a copy of the ID on file to confirm that we've checked it? And I know you're about to cover off on that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So, coming in. So as soon as you start verifying these IDs, this is obviously then now exposing you to more risk in your firm for having access to these documents. So for firms that aren't meeting every single client face to face, and that's quite a lot of them, you're relying on an electronic method to complete that verification. And using an electronic method is really where the risk starts to creep in. We can take email, for example. Asking clients to send a photo of their ID might feel convenient, but it is one of the riskiest ways to handle sensitive information. You wouldn't ask a client to give you their TFN over email. So why would you ask them to give you their ID, their license, or their passport? Emails can be intercepted. They can be compromised or forwarded without your knowledge, especially if they're landing in a shared inbox within your firm. And I think maybe that's something you can talk to, Stace, is a lot of firms do have a shared inbox, whether it's reception or info. We have hello at Annature. That's an inbox monitored by 4 people. Do you have one of those shared inboxes?
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
PKF, Stace?
And yeah, absolutely. I think most firms would and do, as you say, there's, info at the firm or hello at or support at, all those kinds of things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And emails are often connected to other CRM platforms as well. CRMs, workflow tools, document platforms. And so with your email or shared emails being connected to those systems, you may be unknowingly giving those platforms access to client IDs that they were never meant to store in the first place. So that's one of the major risks we have with email and why it's not recommended. I don't think anybody would recommend using email as a way to do this.
We flat out banned it at PKF.
Good.
We flat out say, client, any personally identifiable, even under the Australian privacy principles, like any kind of personally identifiable information. So, things like date of birth, credit card details. There's a whole bunch of regulations that this kind of ties neatly into as well, making sure that you're minimizing risk and, mitigating risk and managing things appropriately.
Yeah, good. And Zoom. So the same goes for Zoom. So meeting with a client over Zoom and having them hold up a license to the webcam and storing or confirming those details, whilst technically it does meet the TPB and the ATO's minimum requirements, you have cited an ID and you have confirmed a name, date of birth, or an address against the ID they've shown you. The challenge is what comes next, and that's how are you keeping a proper record of it. So, as I said before, the TPB and the ATO expect you to maintain a record of what document you cited, when you cited it, who cited it. Pointing to an event in your calendar probably isn't sufficient. We expect there to be a audit trail or a detailed log. Writing it on a sticky note probably also doesn't meet their expectations. So that's where Zoom, whilst I said, does technically meet the requirements. The challenge comes after is how do you record, over the course of 12 months, 24 months, how do you record all of those meetings that took place, what you cited, when, and by who?
The other thing we find, Corey, with doing it over Zoom is often when you're onboarding a client or a client group of entities, if I'm meeting with you, but at the same time we're onboarding, your business partner, your wife, your children, your, other beneficiaries of your trusts, you will be there to hold up your license and show that to me. But how are we going to get the rest of the group?
Yeah.
And so that's where we will often just as a blanket send out an Annature ID request to any of the individuals that are forming part of the group, rather than risking someone saying, yeah, I did a call with Corey when we were onboarding him. I totally cited his ID, and not thinking about the rest of the group.
Everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. So unless you've got a robust system in place to store that information, the visual check on Zoom can fall short. So that's the risks when it comes to IDs over email, where you shouldn't be doing it, over Zoom, where you can do it, probably not best practice. Storing copies of ID. So to answer the point that Shirley asked directly, no. The TPB and the ATO have been clear, unless it is, they state specifically from their site, unless it is absolutely necessary. And I don't think I've ever come across a scenario in 3 years with a client where it has been absolutely necessary. So unless it's absolutely necessary, you should not be retaining copies of identification. The expectation is that you verify, you log that it happened, and you move on. That's it. Those are your requirements as of today. Now we're going to talk about what's coming next. So AML, CTF, Tranche 2 reforms. There has been a little bit of talk about it around the industry. It is coming out July next year. That is the proposed date, and it will become more of a hot topic. We're working with the likes of the Australian Bookkeepers Network, Chartered Accountants. We work very closely with the both of them, and we'll be doing a lot more information session on what these means, how firms can stay ahead of them, and what it looks like. But today, this is what we know, what has been published from AUSTRAC. So the Australian government has formally committed to expand the Anti-Money Laundering, AML, and Counter-Terrorism Financing, CTF, regime. It's known as AML and CTF, and the legislation is expected to be enforced as of July next year. It's part of what's called the Tranche 2 reforms. Up until now, these requirements have applied to banks, financial institutions. We've got a lot of financial advisors that we work with closely that are needing to do this, and other big players like that. But now under Tranche 2, that's changing. So these new laws will apply to accountants, lawyers, real estate agents, and company service providers. So for the first time, accountants will be required to implement AML and CTF controls. And that means things like customer due diligence, or CDD, conducting that on new clients. You'll be required to screen new clients against sanctions lists, PEP databases, and terrorism watch lists. You'll be required to monitor ongoing activity and report any suspicious matters to AUSTRAC. And you'll need to keep a detailed record of those checks that you've performed. Customer due diligence, CDD, at its core means doing two things: verifying identity using an official document like a passport or a driver's license. And that's what most of you will be doing as of right now under the current requirements, is verifying someone against an ID. But the second part is assessing risk. So by checking if that client poses a heightened risk of involvement in things like money laundering, tax evasion, or terrorism financing. And that second part is where a lot of firms will need help because you're now expected to go beyond just confirming a name, a date of birth, and an address. You'll need to check, are they on a global sanctions list? Are they a politically exposed person? Have they been named in any news reports involving fraud, corruption, or financial crime? If you identify any of these flags, you don't necessarily have to reject the client, but you do need to record it, assess the risk, justify the decision to proceed if you decide to do that, and maintain a documented trail. So that's what compliance will look like next year.
As a random point of interest, Corey, the politically exposed person thing, I was chatting to someone who gave me a bit more context around this that I thought was interesting because I kind of went, what is a PEP? Like, what does that mean, and how does that actually fall into this? And it was interesting to have the explanation that if they're a politically exposed person, so if they're a politician or if they're somehow otherwise in the public eye, they're considered to be more easily manipulable. So someone could bribe them to, do the wrong thing, commit fraud, do other things that these regulations are trying to catch. So it's not even necessarily the people who are perpetrating the crimes that they're after. They're after the whole chain of how these things come about and can be manipulated.
Yeah, yeah. So that second part of, assessing the risk and screening your clients against these checks. What that might look like in practice is, let's say someone contacts your firm, wants help with tax planning, you cite their ID, you confirm their full name, date of birth, address, it all matches up, you're good to go. But under Tranche 2, you'll also run an AML and a CTF check. And if that check comes back that the person is listed as a PEP, a politically exposed person, maybe they're a former government official or they have close ties to someone in a high risk jurisdiction, it's not a deal breaker, as I said. You don't have an obligation to reject the client, but you have an obligation to treat the relationship as a higher risk. So you'd be expected to log it, assess the potential exposure, and determine whether you're comfortable proceeding and document the entire process. So it's about lifting the professional standard, making sure criminals and bad actors can't just walk through the door using a fake name and a TFN. And now I want to get into how do you implement that in a way that's simple, secure, and it fits the way your firm already operates. So for a large portion of you that are already verifying clients' identities, whether it's through Annature or other methods, doing those AML and CTF checks is what we've set out to solve. So not just about ticking those compliant boxes, but making ID and AML, CTF checks part of the workflow without introducing more work, more admin overhead, and more risks. So the solution we built is specifically for the accounting, since we've had great success with it in the financial services space for the last 3 years. It meets the compliance requirements laid out by the TPB, the ATO, and AUSTRAC, and does it in a way that fits with how your firm operates. So here is a quick overview of how that works. So Annature connects to several practice management tools. We've got Zero Practice Manager, My Practice Management, FYI Elite will be coming soon as well. So when Annature is connected to your practice management tool, we display a list of all of your clients in real time. So the dashboard in Annature is a real-time view of every single client from your practice management tool. You can open any client record and send a verification request with one click. So the name, email address, and mobile number is pre-filled automatically from the data that you already have in your practice management tool. We are not practice management. We don't want to be. We integrate with the tools that you use in order to bring this data in to make it as easy as possible to run a verification request on that client. So when a verification is sent, your client will receive a professional branded email from your firm. We feature your logo, your colors, brand, every aspect of it. Your clients don't see Annature. They don't know who Annature is. We don't want them to know who Annature is. They've built a relationship with your firm. Your firm is who we want to be showing them these requests are coming from. From that email, your clients are guided through confirming their full name, date of birth, residential address, and uploading a photo of their ID document, so a passport or a driver's license. The client also is prompted to take a selfie, and we use the selfie for a biometrics check to confirm that they match the ID document. And this part here is really strong because it confirms that the document owner is the person completing the check. So when you've got a husband and a wife that may be, easy access to each other's ID documents, this biometrics check is what will give you absolute certainty that if Jane is completing the ID request using Jane's ID document and has provided a selfie image, it was Jane that completed that request and not Jane's husband, who just so happened to have access to the ID document. So this information is then packaged up and passed to our AML partners. So we partner with ComplyCube and Real AML. And a full suite of checks is run. So global sanctions, terrorism watch lists, PEP databases, and adverse media. We get back a nice, clean PDF report that summarizes whether any checks were failed, any flags that were raised, anything that failed is summarized nice and clear for you in this report. That report, along with the status of the verification, is also surfaced directly in Annature. So this now serves as your audit trail of having conducted a check, who you did the check against, when they completed it, what information they provided to you, what type of document, and the results of that AML and CTF screening check. So here we're looking at it, four screening categories that ran, and they all passed. Nothing was raised on either of these categories. So those results are synced back to your practice management tool. So here we're seeing what that looks like in Xero Practice Manager. XPM came out with fields to record. Have you verified the client? When did you verify it? Who was it verified by? Those fields are designed to be answered in order to stay compliant with the TPB and the ATO expectations. And so when we talk about doing a verification Annature, we sync the results back to your practice management tool. We'll do this also for GradeSoft or MyOb Practice Management and FYI Elite when that comes. But it's about sharing the data. So we're not about holding the data and keeping it ourselves. We'll share just the output or the outcome with those tools. And the PDF report as well, what we saw where all the results are categorized for you. The PDF reports are also shared back to your practice management as well. So if your client is a pet, you'll know immediately. If there's a match on a sanctions list, it's flagged for review, and every step from the request to the result is logged securely, and that forms part of your compliance, your firm's compliance record. And the beauty is it happens all within the same workflow. So you don't have to go off to another platform or pay a separate provider. You don't have to try and stitch it all together manually. It's all right there. For those that are already using verification Annature, running the AML and CTF checks is another tick box. It's not an additional step, additional platform you have to go to. It's a tick box. And then now at the end, you get more information to make an informed decision on. So starting this now means you won't be scrambling come July next year. You'll be setting the standard for your firm, your clients, and the profession. So we've talked about what the rules are and what's coming next year. Let's talk practically what that looks like for firms moving forward as of today. And this is a gap that we've seen over and over again, and we've consulted with a lot of the firms that are using Annature as to what that looks like. Even if your firm is proactively sending out verification requests, if you're already using Annature, there is no system that brings the compliance together in one place. There's no clear dashboard that tells you, here are the clients you've verified, here are the clients where the verification is in progress. We do show you that in Annature, but here are the clients that have been flagged. And here are the clients you've completely missed. And that's the piece there, the clients that you've missed, that's what we've set out to solve. So in this example, you can see, in this part, you can see at the top there, you've got Annature's ID dashboard that shows you everyone you've sent a verification request to. So all the outstanding requests, completed requests, flag requests, that's there. In XPM, you've got all your clients. But checking, have I done the verification on every single client? that's where it would go. That's where it would go wrong. You'd be exporting results, marrying them up in Excel. That's what's missing. So how do you know every single client has been verified? If someone's been missed, what's the alert? Where's the red flag that tells you that? You'll only find out by manually checking, and by that point, it's probably too late. So that level of visibility and certainty is what will be an essential part. And from a technical point of view, my background as a developer, what's missing to me is a centralized intelligence system that brings practice management database and verification together in one place. So a single source of truth, something that knows who your clients are, when they were onboarded, whether a verification request has been sent, whether it's been completed, what the results are, and what further action is required. This one place for your clients and the verification status, that does not exist in the market right now. And
As
so,
I say, this is my favorite bit because as someone who's in charge of implementing this stuff for the firm, I can build a really amazing process. I can write a really good onboarding checklist. I can have a really well documented client management handbook, QMS, all that kind of stuff. But I'm not the one doing the onboarding. It's the rest of the team that are doing that. And I've either got to trust that they are, which, you do, of course, trust that your team do the right thing. And the reality is also there's, circumstances where they'll miss it, they'll forget. So as the one who's accountable for other people having done or not done stuff, having, like Corey says, this single source of truth and this centralized dashboard that you can, manage by exception. So instead of spending a lot of time, as Corey said, manually exporting lists and going through and hoping for the best or not finding out until it's too late, you've just got the dashboard that you can skim down and, allocate out for people to follow up on.
yeah. So we call it the Annature AML compliance dashboard. So imports all of your clients' data in one place. And what's cool about this dashboard is that you can set a date and say, as of this date moving forward. So for some firms that only want to start doing this as of July next year, you can say, only show me clients that I've added to my practice management or I've engaged with as of July 1st, 2026. And then moving forward, it will only show you those clients because those are the requirements that you'll have an obligation to be running these checks on. So it imports the clients that you care about and cross-references them automatically with Annature's ID records and the AML and the CTF results. So there's no more spreadsheets, guesswork, and no more questions, has this person been verified or not? We'll give you a real-time overview of who's been verified, who's in progress, who's outstanding. It even flags the important risk signals, like clients who've been identified as a pet, or those that have been matched against a sanctions watch list, so you can proactively assess those clients in your firm's exposure. And for us, it's not a feature update. This is a product. It's a compliance tool that's been designed to answer those questions and to show you where is your audit trail. The dashboard is your audit trail. And have you completed verification for every single new client? That previous slide that I showed, these are all of your active clients as of July 1st, 2026 moving forward. And you can see, yes, these are my clients and these are the status of their verifications. There's one client at the top that hasn't been sent a verification. This is what tells you that that client hasn't been sent a verification. So all of that information is captured, logged, and accessible from this dashboard with clear, human-readable reports ready to go. So you don't need to piece together emails, PDF, and internal notes. We centralize everything. So your team has complete visibility when it matters. And it's about shifting from reactive compliance and chasing things after the fact to now a proactive system that lets you stay ahead, get ahead of the new clients that are coming in. The dashboard will tell you, these are my new clients, and yes, they've been sent to verification. They may be in progress, but the dashboard is what will show that to you. Now, there's some key dates for this as well. I'll pass over to you, Stace, to talk about this and what PKF is doing ahead of these changes.
Yeah, so little disclaimer at the bottom of the slide there. It's always in fine print, but just wanted to call out that this, we're talking to you today about what we know so far. The final regulations and guidelines have not even been released, as you can see from the dates on the screen. So all the information we're sharing is very much general in nature, doesn't take into account anyone's specific circumstances on this call, even PKF, speaking from our perspective. So it'll be important that everyone gets across the regulations properly as they're released over the next, 18 or 12, 9, 12 months or so. So yeah, make sure you take advice on that. We have started taking advice. And we're trying to get ahead of what we can, as we know that the stuff Corey's talking about today with client ID is already required by TPB and ATO, so we're on the front foot with that, and we know it gets expanded with the KYC stuff. So just to share the jargon, I suppose the abbreviation KYC stands for Know Your Client, so you'll see that referenced throughout some of these guidelines as well, and that just means everything that Corey's kind of spoken about so far. As far as what the AML CTF, the Tranche 2 compliance stuff is going to involve, other than the Know Your Client provisions that Corey's mentioned, there's a whole bunch of stuff around the requirement to register. So we know the ability to register is going to be open from the 31st of March next year, and any firms that have to register will have to have registered before the 1st of July. So you've got that 3-month window to get the registration in. Part of the registration includes assessing and confirming where your reporting entities will sit if you've got more than one entity in your firm structure. It also requires nominating a compliance officer. Again, there's not a lot of detail available about what that needs to look like for different firms, particularly those who are part of a network. So we're still waiting for that. We're also waiting for more information around what the program and the documentation requirements will be. We know there'll be requirements to train the team, but again, we haven't moved towards that yet because we're still waiting on, all the details of what we'll need to train them on. The initial advice we've had and some seminars that we've attended have spoken about the intentions of AUSTRAC behind this. So like coming back to first principles, what are they actually trying to achieve by roping, a whole bunch, expanding the provisions, roping a whole bunch of us in as part of Tranche 2? And the idea being that accounting firms, real estate agents, solicitors and legal firms are often easy targets for people who, as Corey's described, want to just walk through the door and, pull the wool out over our eyes and have us help them set up a company or, whatever the case may be. So from what I've been told and what I've heard, the intention of AUSTRAC is to rope in as many of us as they can. Having said that, the initial regulations that we have talk about you're only required, to comply with all of this if you're providing designated services. There is a list of designated services available. Interestingly to me, providing tax services in and of itself is not considered a designated service. It's not specifically named. Same with bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff. It more talks about things like helping to establish companies, providing advice around transactions, handling money on behalf of clients, all that kind of stuff. And then it also goes on to talk about, what the reporting requirements are. And it's things like if you were to see a suspicious transaction, then you would be required to report it. And what I and we are waiting for further guidance on is if I don't provide those really specific designated services, so if I don't, act as a registered office for any of my clients, if I don't, incorporate companies or set up trusts or anything like that, so if I'm not in based on the specified designated services, but I do have access to my clients' accounting records and I can see that they're sending 200 grand a month to the Cayman Islands or whatever the case may be, if I'm not required to register, but they still want me reporting on that stuff, how does that all fit together? So there's a lot of unknowns around what's going to rope us in and what forces the registration and the reporting. So as I say, that's the stuff that is quite vague, and we're waiting for more information on. All of the statutory bodies have committed to providing guidance as it becomes available, and some of the dates are around there off the back of the consultation. So I know CANS, for instance, has committed to providing, info packs and guidance that we can use as practitioners, including, a head start on the reporting requirements and the documentation that we'll have to have in place. Until all of that stuff comes out, the only thing that we at PKF have certainty around is that these Know Your Client requirements are definitely a part of it. As I say, we already know it's partially required for ATO and TPB already. And so the thing that we're already on the front foot with is engaging with Annature and making sure we've got the systems that Annature offer in place so that we'll have to take on the administrative burden of getting the documentation in place and training the team and all that kind of stuff. But the administrative burden of jumping through the hoops to identify clients and to, as I said before, administer them ongoing and know who we have and haven't done the right thing for, that part of it, I'm not interested in doing that manually. So Annature is definitely the way to go. The other thing that is interesting, and again, the guidance should shed some light on for us, is if we don't have to do this for all clients, if it's only clients where we're providing designated services, don't know whether that's the case. If it is, we're kind of taking the stance, I think, of we will be more likely to just do it blanket for all clients. It will help us to have that kind of peace of mind that we're not missing those clients. So that's our stance as it currently stands. There's a bunch of questions, Corey, that have come through that I was going to ask you about. Do you have more slides to go through before I shout those ones?
Yeah, no, that pretty much wraps it up. So just in summary, we've got we've got requirements now and new changes coming out next year. Uh, a lot of pressure from regulators with these changes coming. But the good news is we've we've done this. We've been doing this for 3 years. We were ahead of the curve when it came out in 2022. We have over 3,500 individual accountants and bookkeepers that trust us when it comes to this every week. And I say week because they're not using it every day. They're using it when they have new clients. So that's the stats for us here at Annature. 3,500 accountants and bookkeepers have used us to verify at least one client in the last week. So it's our domain. We know what we're doing. We've got a reputation in the space for doing this, and the new product is genuinely built to give you that complete overview in one place. So for anyone that does want to learn more, we'll be sending some info after the event, but we'd love to sit down and show you more about how that works.
Something else, sorry, Corey,
Yeah.
something else I forgot to say earlier is that some of the requirements for this Tranche 2 stuff is also, so it's KYC, know your client, it's also KYE, know your employee. And there are going to be extra requirements about doing all of these checks, formal identity verification and the PEP checks and all the other kind of stuff for employees as they come on board. Again, it's something that we as a firm have kind of decided we'll just do it for all new employees. Again, there's requirements for certain employees, employees who are handling trust funds, employees who are onboarding and who are, specific onboarding clients and also specifically helping with company and corporations and all that kind of stuff. Again, my attitude is kind of, well, even if we hire someone today who we don't think will ever do those things, they probably will at some point, or may be promoted or move into other roles where they're involved with it. So again, we're thinking we'll just start using Annature for all of our employee onboarding as well to put it through this stuff. The other thing I was going to talk about, in case people haven't heard yet, is the tipping off legislation that's come in place. So alongside this is actually already kicked off. I think it kicked off in March this year. There's a legal requirement for you not to tip off anyone who you may be suspicious of or you may need to report. So obviously, if a client comes in and they are flagged on one of these lists and you say, hey, you flagged on this list, I'm going to report you, then they'll probably scramble to, cover themselves. So there is already a legal requirement in place that if you're suspicious about someone and you, either are going to or have reported them, that you make sure you don't inform them of that. Yeah.
So I've got a few questions here that have been asked. The cross-checking or the dashboard that we've built, for this example, I've used Zero Practice Manager, but as I've said, this will exist for all practice management tools that we can integrate with. So My Practice Management, FYI Elite, when that becomes available, we'll be looking to do the same with the likes of Carbon and Intuit. These are all integrations that take a little while to build, and there's a bit of an engagement process to be onboarded to their development tool. So our goal is to have full coverage of all the key and major practice management tools that are out there and to provide this compliant dashboard and overview for all of that.
Can I throw in there, Corey, too? My experience working with Corey and the Annature team is that if they don't have an integration for something, they're unbelievably willing to build it. So I deal with a lot of tech vendors as part of my day job, both for PKF as a firm and the software that we use internally, and also the work that I do with clients. So I recommend Annature. I mean, I know it's built for and focused on the accounting industry, but I recommend Annature to my clients all the time. And often they're using not accounting software because they're not accountants themselves, and they've got other, business management software that they're using. And I know Corey's built integrations to those in the past as well. So if you want to see Annature integrated with something that it isn't yet, let Corey know. And I've got no doubt he'll put it on the roadmap and get it sorted.
Yeah, we're willing and able to work with anybody. We sit in the middle of an ecosystem providing e-signing and ID, and we want to be able to, share that data with as many tools as we can.
The other thing I would add to that too is I know of firms who are using, and clients, as I say, who are using Annature standalone. So even if it's not directly integrated yet to whatever you would like it to be, as I say, ask Corey, and he's one of the fastest, in fact, the fastest vendor I've ever built with in terms of building and releasing updates and integrations. But if it's not, I know of plenty who are using it standalone. It's still easier to send a document for e-signing or send out an ID using Annature without an integration than it is to try and do any of that manually.
I can see Trent's popped his camera on. I think that means we're out of time.
We're at time. That was so good. You guys could just talk and talk and talk. All great stuff. I mean, you kept everyone else engaged in here as well. Everyone, please jump into the chat and please thank Stacie and Corey for their time and going through everything. I hope you've learnt something. When we did that poll earlier, hopefully now you're in the aware bucket as opposed to the I'm not aware bucket. So glad to think so, Diane. That was enlightening. Very good. Glad to hear that. As we start to wrap this session, I will let you all know that we have our next lot of sessions starting at 2 o'clock, and we're in the home stretch, ladies and gents. Our last session is at 4 o'clock, so we're at 2, 3, 4. We're so close. We're nearly there. But I hope you've enjoyed everything so far. We are about to jump into 2 sessions. One of them is with Amy Holdsworth. Before you grow, build the firm that you actually deserves to scale. So this is about foundations, having all the right things in place before you start to decide to grow and do everything else. If you would like to look at something else, the other option would be around advisory. So adding advisory, keeping compliance, how firms are expanding their value. And this is with Mark Holton. If you've never seen Mark speak before, he's fantastic. He's been around for a little while. I'm not trying to comment on him being around for like a long time. Great guy. He's been talking on this topic for every time I see him, I come out feeling inspired and motivated. That's the best thing I could say about Mark. He is a very good entertainer, engaging speaker, and so is Amy. They're both fantastic. We're very lucky. We're very spoiled for choice, is what I would say. If you want to join those sessions, you can do that by registering through the Growth Club website. Mark, you're in the wrong session.
Also, his name says Stacie Shaw. Does that say that just for me?
I know. Mark, you're in the wrong
I just
session.
heard somebody say that I've been around forever and I'm old, Trent, so I thought I'd better
I didn't
jump
say you're
on
old. I
the
said you're amazing. That's what I was trying to get across. That you're amazing. And did you hear the part where I said you're an engaging speaker as well?
No worries, mate. This is the link I had for it, Trent. So
I'm going to send you a new link, mate. So just this is the best kind of typo ever. I can't believe you heard me say that, Mark. I'm trying to give you a hype up for why everyone should come and chat to you in the next session.
All I heard was old, mate. That's okay.
No, I didn't say that. I did not say that.
He'll use vinyl to prove that the transcript.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I said he was amazing.
No worries. Good
We're
work,
going to officially
guys.
wrap this session, and you can come and see Mark properly in the next session. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Trent. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, guys.